room here that I could literally add an item and say number 2, Joe, in the event Joe Smith purchases the property within 3 weeks of listing date, no commission, right, shall be owed to Keller Williams. After 3 weeks, the full commission and paragraph, what number is it up there? Paragraph A3 shall apply. And you go, how would I know to write it like that? Well, you need a little practice. You come see your broker, and your broker will help you write the phrase, right? But that's basically what you're saying is, and it's always good to be clear in the event, right? If this doesn't happen, then this shall happen. So yeah, I just wrote it into that space, and there is the didn't do such a good job typing because I was on the wrong thing. My apologies. You get the idea. Okay. So that takes us to the next paragraph, A4, and this is A4 is the nuts and bolts of this contract and the one that's the most challenging to fill in. So it says the listing period begins. When do you want to begin? Do you want to begin today? Monday. Do you want to begin Monday? Today's Tuesday. Does Monday give you enough time? So here's basically what has to be done. And your to-do list will remind you of this, right? So you might want to split your to-do list between what do I have to do from the day I sign the listing agreement to the day I put it on MLS. And the one that takes the most is the seller may want to have the house power washed and plant some pretty flowers and you know, have the place deep cleaned. And you go, okay, how long ago? I'm pretty sure I can do that within 2 weeks. Great. All right, then in 2 weeks, I'm going to schedule the photographer to come the next day, and the photographer is going to take 2-3 days for photographs. If I'm doing a video, that could take a little longer. So I might need a week or so to post my video, right, to get a full video. So now I'm into 3 weeks. See where I'm going? I need to figure this out with the seller. If the unit is totally gorgeous and ready to go and it's like they've done everything, they didn't call me until they were done, right? Then I go, okay, all I need to do is my photography, and while the photography is being processed and finalized, I'll do my flyers and my collateral material, all of that I can get ready while that's happening. So great, we could list in, and at this point, I would have talked to a photographer, found myself a videographer, because that's what takes a little longer, and see how much time they need and when they're available, right? And then schedule the actual listing. So this is the date that you have to put in the MLS. And this is the date by which, the MLS calculates your days on market. So if you put today, but you don't have people sign the contract for 2 weeks, which is another way to do this, it would still start from today. It would just show that the listing's 2 weeks old on the day that you posted it. So what I'm talking about is the MLS rule that says you must list your property within 2 days of the last date on the contract. In other words, what is the day that the contract becomes a valid contract, or the list date, whichever is the last date. And that works either this is the last date because it's 3 weeks from now, but we're signing today. Right? Now I've got a valid listing contract. Another way that people do it is to say, let's list it, I don't know exactly if it's going to be 2 weeks or 3 weeks, so let's just say 2 weeks, and I won't have my broker sign it. So now you have the client sign it, but you hold off having the broker sign it. And then when you're ready to post the listing, you get your broker to sign it, and now you have 2 days from the broker's signature, because it isn't a valid listing contract until both parties sign it. So that would allow you, however, when you do it that way, whatever date you have in here is the list date. So now this could be 7 days old, right? So I prefer to sign a contract, because now you've got it buttoned up. You don't have a contract. If somebody goes to talk to that seller and says, do you have a listing agreement? Says, well, I signed one, but I don't think they've signed it yet. I'm still waiting to get it back, or, whoops. Now there's not a contract in place, right? Now somebody else could actually come in. So it's better to have the contract signed and to move this. And if perchance you get done earlier, and you could list it earlier, you do a change form. Just do a change form. So what's the start date, and then what's the end date? And that should be based on what? What do you think your recommendation for a listing term should be?
6 months, right?
Well, I'm asking, what should that recommendation be based on?
Average days on market.
Yeah, absorption rate, and what's the market doing, and how long is it taking the average to sell, right? And if the market is absorbing 5 listings a month at this price range, and we have 20 listings, that's 4 months worth of inventory. So this should definitely take less than 6 months. So I'm fine with that. If I've got 20 listings on the market, but we're only selling 2 a month, now how long is it going to take to sell 20 listings? 10 months. That's 10 months worth of inventory, right? So the classes that I just offered at RAM were the listing classes, and we talk a lot about market positioning and how do you make sure you're the first one to sell, or the second, or the third, or wherever, right? So market positioning is important, and will help you determine, say, well, if you're going to price it that way, 6 months will do, right? But if you're going to price it that way, I need a year, right? Because it makes a difference. So you put your term here, and then it says these are the 2 cancellation clauses, and they get a little confusing. So the first one says that either party may end the listing contract with blank calendar days advanced written notice to the other. Now, it's very normal in the industry to see 30 days there. I don't like 30 days, because what applies for somebody to have to give me notice also applies for me having to give a seller notice. And I have been in the position where I had 30 days in a contract and I needed to fire that seller, and he said, no, you owe me 30 days. You gotta work for me for 30 days. And it was a challenge, and I said, okay, I'm not doing that again. The other reason I don't like it is, I don't like to say to somebody, I'm gonna hold you hostage for 30 days, or I have the right to, right? I'm gonna make you give me 30 days notice. Times have changed, we don't take that long anymore. You can take ads off of the internet, you can take it off of your Facebook page, whatever it is you're doing, you can change things. And worst comes to worst, you attract a buyer. I mean, what's so terrible about having ads out about this property, right? You just don't want to be representing that you're listing it anymore, and chances are you can pull that down pretty quickly. So I put 7 days at the most, 5 to 7 days, something like that. Just give me a little notice so we talk about it. And then the second one says, however, neither party may end this listing contract before midnight on blank date unless seller and brokerage firm agree in writing to an earlier date. In other words, now we have to have mutual written consent to cancel earlier. And the reason that's in there is we like to say to sellers, so I'm letting you cancel within 5 days for sure, except give me 60 days to get started, because all of my marketing effort and all of my energy and all of that is going to be in the first 30 to 45 days. And I really appreciate the chance to do that and have that go to work for me, and a chance to recoup my investment. Is that okay with you? Yeah, that makes sense. Most people are reasonable about that. So that's why this says it. Now, some people put 90 days there. Okay, again, I don't like that. The longer these things go, it just seems, wow, 90 days, right? Okay, so let me, but that's up to you. We each, these are not pre-filled because you get to decide how you want to run your business. Okay. So then the next line is items included or excluded unless specifically excluded. Exhibit A is made a part of this listing contract. So this is where it says Exhibit A belongs to this listing contract. What is Exhibit A?
List of everything that's in the house.
Right, the data input form, right? That's our way of gathering all that information so we can put it into the MLS.
Yeah.
So if the refrigerator is included, and all those things are included. All right, and then the next section says, okay, what's the list price? And we just, if you just put in the number here, $650,000, it'll spell it out up there. It'll automatically do that. And then the next paragraph, A7, is about compensation to the brokerage firm, and we have filled in for you 6% plus general excise tax on the commission. And the reason, this is interesting, I used to just say plus GET. And when you just go plus GET, people go like, what? You want me to pay the GET on this? I didn't know I had to pay GET. And what they instantly think is it's the GET on the full price, right? Well, there's no GET on the full price, of course. So people just go have this little moment. And I was teaching a class, and one of the top agents in Wailea, Tom Tezak, said to me, Marion, we came up with a new thing to put there, and it works fantastic. I said, well, what is that? And he said, just spell it out. Plus the general excise tax on the commission. And people don't have this moment, and it's just a lot easier to talk about. So.
Is that the same GET that's at the bottom of the listing where it says seller pays GET, yes or no?
That's correct. So if you get a yes to this, so if you get this signed this way, now you're going to have to say yes in your listing.
And that's what Keller defaults to, that the seller pays GET on the commission.
This is your template.
Okay.
And you can see why, right? It's going to get you more money. So get your GET covered. That's why.
What is the?
Oh, I was hearing buyer pays it or seller pays it, not.
Excuse me. Who is this contract with?
Yes, but I'm thinking of the listing.
This is the listing agreement. Who is this contract with?
The seller.
Between the seller and whom?
You.
That's correct. So between the seller and the brokerage, we are asking the seller to pay the GET on the commission. And the commission is how much?
6%.
That's correct.
Okay.
So it has nothing to do with the buyer, nothing whatsoever,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
This doesn't.
She's asking about on the MLS.
Yes, but it
There's
doesn't
a spot.
know. When it says yes or no, it's only whether or not Marion is paying it or the seller's paying it. It has nothing to do with the buyer on the listing. I'm just not clear on that. Thank you.
Yes, has nothing
Yeah.
to do with the buyer, has everything to do with the agency and this contract.
Okay.
Yeah, awesome. Cool.
Thank you.
Glad we got that clear.
That's my big aha.
Yeah, awesome.
In
Okay.
advance.
So now, these are all the conditions under which a brokerage firm is going to earn its commission, right? So it's good for you to read through these and be aware of these. I don't want to spend too much time here, but obviously you've earned the commission when you've made the sale and the sale closes. But technically, you've also earned the commission when the seller turns down a full price offer in all the conditions that he said earlier that he was willing to take. Or if the seller suddenly gets out of the deal, right? Suddenly in the middle of a deal that was acceptable to him, gets out of the deal, technically the seller owes you a commission. I can tell you we don't do this. This, number one, is very hard to get any money out of a seller that changes their mind, that gets cold feet, and they take their house off the market in the middle of an escrow and they go run away. It's really hard to get money. You don't have a deposit, right? There's nothing you can do here. So it's hard to get these. Another place, however, that's worthwhile knowing about, so you've got it in the back of your mind, is if the seller entertains an option. An option says, I'm gonna give you some money, I'm the buyer, I'm gonna give you some money, I'm gonna rent the property from you for a year, and at the end of that year, I'm gonna have the option to exercise this purchase contract or not. So we're gonna agree to a purchase contract today, we're gonna agree to a lease, and we're gonna agree to the option amount. So your seller gets an offer for an option with $20,000 of option money. This contract says that 50% of that option money goes to pay commission to the agents. So your seller's only getting $10,000. So now, is it worth it for the seller to take this deal for only $10,000 option money? Do you get where I'm going? So now you suddenly go, that's not enough option money for you. And he goes, what? 20,000 is great. Well, no, actually, you have to pay up to half of that for commissions. So I get half of my commission paid, or half of the option money's worth of commission gets paid to the agents for making the deal happen, and then the balance of whatever our commission is gets paid at closing, if it closes, and if it doesn't closes. But we brought you this deal, right? And it's kind of a semi-deal, so we're gonna get kind of semi-paid. So that's what happens here. And it's kind of important to know that. We don't do a lot of options, but I just had somebody negotiate an option and they had no idea this said this. And they'd already talked to the seller, and the seller loved the $100,000 option money. And I said, whoa, the seller's only gonna get $50,000. And he was like, what? I go, yeah.
And then the realtor would get the other
Yeah.
50,000?
The listing agent gets the other $50,000 and splits it with the buyer's agent the way he agreed to split it with the buyer's agent, right? So that option money wasn't in fact enough for the seller, because the seller wanted more option money.
And the option money doesn't come off the sale price, it's just option money.
Oh, it adds, it's like a down payment. It's considered a part of the, yes, it does come off the sale price, so it's part of the down payment. But if you walk away, you lose it, right? The seller gets to keep it, gets paid out
Yeah.
at the beginning of the lease.
And you still pay rent, like monthly?
Yeah, and in an option, you could like offer, I'll rent this for $2,000 and I will credit you $500 a month worth of the rent towards the option, right? And so again, the seller says, no, I want $2,000 a month. I'm not crediting you, right? So that becomes part of the negotiation. Okay.
And if you have a buyer that wants to do an option, is that just something a form you fill out with the purchase contract?
Yeah, there's an option addendum, right? And we'll go over that on Thursday. It's one of the addenda that you can access through Zipforms, is an option agreement, and you just kind of follow the bouncing ball and fill it out. Should we do this or should we do that? It's like, I can't answer you. You and your client need to decide what they want to offer or accept, right? So it's, and then an agreement is actually drawn up by an attorney as a result of that form.
And a buyer's agent might bring this option?
So options really only happen in markets where it's really hard to sell something. So that's where it's come up recently, is because the high end in our industry is so slow in our island here. So that's why it was a $50,000 or $100,000 option fee, because it was a $3.5 million property, something like that. And those are not leaping off the page, right? So yes, buyer came up with this creative solution. How about I give you an option? So I was like, I'll take an option. Takes it off my hands for a year, and I've got my costs covered. He was going to charge $20,000 a month for rent, and okay, go for it, you know. Yeah, I know, right? Okay. Yeah. So where was it used a lot? It was used a lot in Las Vegas when, you know, the crash happened and they had all that inventory. They built all these houses, and these whole neighborhoods were vacant. And so they offered people, give me $5,000 option money and we'll give you a lease and you can exercise the option in a year or two. And people took it because it was just a great deal. And so people got into housing that way. They did it in Florida and Texas and in Las Vegas a lot. I have never seen an option completed here.
Completed, you mean the people didn't opt to buy?
They,
The
sellers
sellers
didn't
did.
opt to accept, or buyers and sellers couldn't come to term.
I did one time personally. My husband and I followed through
Here?
on it.
Here?
In Oregon,
In Oregon. When?
4 years ago.
Oh, okay. Awesome. There you go.
I have a buyer that is wanting to do that with like everything, like.
So you need to explain to that buyer that it's an appealing thing.
We didn't pay it off in 2 years after we bought it.
Well, that's different than, that's a purchase money mortgage. Then the seller carried your mortgage?
No, we had a mortgage. I think it was just some left.
Whatever.
Oh,
Yeah. So the thing to explain to people is that this is appealing to sellers who can't sell their property. So what kind of market do we have right now? A seller's market.
Yeah.
This is a technique to appeal to a seller who isn't able to sell their property. So it isn't gonna, and why? Because they're writing a purchase contract today that'll be enforced in a year. So would you like to write a contract today for what you're selling in a year? Not currently, prices are still going up. Why would I commit myself to a price today that I have to accept in a year, right? So, well, the reason you would is because you're gonna collect rent for a year and you've got a contract and peace
You're
of
off
mind
on
and
rent and-
you're, right, whatever,
Why
right?
would a buyer want to do that when prices are starting to come down? I mean,
That's correct.
Yeah, so-
Yes, that's correct. The buyer would wanna do that if they anticipate prices going down, but that's when the seller doesn't wanna do it. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's the other way around. The
Yeah,
buyer,
yeah.
it's the other way around. The buyer would want to do it when prices are going up so that they don't have to pay next year's price.
Yeah.
And, yeah, there you go. Fortunately, we don't do a lot of these, so, but just to make you aware. All right, so those are all the terms of the, under which you get paid here. And then this is the protection period. The protection period is that period of time in which the people who have seen the property with you as the listing agent, and then let's say the contract ends, and they hire another listing agent, and one of the buyers that saw the property while you were the listing agent comes back and buys the property from that new listing agent. Now, that name, if you have that name on a protection list and gave it to the seller within 10 days of the cancellation of your listing agreement, those names are your protection list. And whatever number you put here is how many months that those names need to be honored as you get the commission if any of these buyers buy.
The full commission.
The full commission is due you.
And that's good for expirations as well as cancellations?
That's correct. That's correct.
And how many days do you recommend?
So norm here again, kind of what I see most, is 180 days. And I don't like holding somebody for 180 days. So to me, 120 seems reasonable. That's 4 months. Now, in order to do that, you have to keep record of all of your buyers that come through. You will find it fascinating as to how many agents don't.
And you give this list to the seller?
There's another section coming up, yes. So I'm gonna
Okay.
put 120 here. And then within 10 calendar days from expiration or termination of this listing contract, brokerage firm shall provide a written prospect list of potential buyer names to whom the property was presented during the term of the listing contract. If the brokerage firm fails to submit a prospect list to the seller within the time provided, 10 days after expiration, then the protection period shall not apply to the brokerage firm. So you got 10 days to get that list in, and it's recommended that you get a receipt. And then it says, if during the protection period, seller enters into an accepted purchase contract, exchange agreement, or grants an option to purchase the property under a purchase contract with any prospect buyer whose name appears on a timely submitted prospect list as provided in paragraph above, then the brokerage firm shall be entitled to compensation. And then it says, compensation owed to brokerage firm under this protection period shall be paid pursuant to A7 above.
So it's full commission,
That's
6%.
correct. That's correct. And that's why when agents talk to each other, yeah, and like, let's say some buyer comes along that, you know, saw the property 4 months ago and the new listing agent has been working for 3.5 months and you've been out of there for 3.5 months and suddenly this buyer comes along, I'd be willing to make a deal with that agent. That agent just worked for 3.5 months, right? And I worked for 6 months, so I might go like, okay, you work the deal and I'll split it with you 50-50. Something like that. You know, that's what I would do, but I'm easy that way.
I was gonna say, what happens to the new listing agent who's working out for nothing? Okay.
Nothing, work
Right.
for nothing.
Yeah,
So it makes you be a little cautious of if you take a listing and there's a list of 47 names that just got handed to you, right? And now what I'd ask for is when did these people see this? Because if majority of them are only 30 days old, there's a pretty high likelihood one of those buyers could come back. So now do you want to take a listing under those conditions, right?
or if you call the previous agent and say,
Are you, right?
long list, should we cooperate?
Yeah, is there something we can do here, or can you tell me how many saw these in the last 30 days, like what's the likelihood here? Yeah, talk to people, right? Exactly. All right, so then we have 8-9, talks about cooperating brokerage firms, so we're gonna give, out of our 6%, we give 3%, however, that is not a given, right? Sometimes you do not give split 50-50. So I think I gave you the example of my Kihei condo listing, which just sold in 3 weeks, and it was like, what amazing. But I charged the seller 6%, and I took 3.5%, and I gave the buyer's agent 2.5%, because I listed that property 4 years ago. I put a tenant in it when the seller died. I've been working with the heir to this property for 4 years to get her and, you know, help her out. My staging was in the unit, like the tenant lived in my stuff. And so and she was totally fine with it. She's totally like, absolutely, and I needed that, right, in order to make this work for me, yeah. So that's what I did, so that's up to you. And then the next puka says, or you could offer a dollar amount, right? Our commissions don't have to be percentage. And then we have additional terms. So our additional terms say that the general excise tax is referenced in A7 above shall be calculated at 4.166. People don't understand that, but in order for them to calculate it when the commission is paid, right, to make 4% work, they have to pay 4.166.
So they pay that 4.166 off of the 6% commission?
No, on top of the 6%.
Okay, and that's where they get that figure, they pay that extra.
To calculate the GET for the seller to pay, 4.166% is what's used.
Okay.
And the second item is seller agrees that listing agent shall disclose to other agents the existence of an offer if one has been received. So getting the seller to agree to that is always a good thing. Another thing that you can put right here, that I've put right here is, so number 4 is agent may disclose seller's reason for selling as, and you write the reason right there. My last company that I worked with, we had that in our template so that agents remember to have this conversation and have it in writing. What am I allowed to say as to why you are selling your property? Because do buyers want to know this? Absolutely. People, it's like one of the first things people ask is why are they selling, right? I don't know whether we're just innately nosy or we kind of want to know the karma of this house, right, or the unit or whatever it is. So, and I had on one of my recent sales, the sellers were leaving Island and moving far away to the East Coast, but they still had jobs here and they were selling kind of early and they didn't want the community to know. So we talked about this at length, and we came up with, they're just tired of living in this part of Haiku and they want to go try somewhere else. And it never said that they were moving off island or whatever, so that was the wording I put in my contract.
So you give people the idea if they're motivated to leave because of a job transfer, that they'll take less money. So you want to avoid implying something like that. That's one of the reasons people would ask, why are they leaving? I would think. That's one of the reasons I would ask. What's their motivation for selling?
Yeah, I'm not here to disclose the seller's motivation to you. That's not, as a matter of fact, my job is to protect
Yeah.
the seller's motivation. So absolutely, in this particular case, it was also because they sold 6 months before they left.
Mhm.
So they were gonna have lots of time, so they weren't in a rush. They could have taken 3 months. They weren't, that's why they listed early. So in this case, it was personal reasons, right? Privacy reasons. Divorce, people don't want to let it be known publicly that they're getting a divorce, right? Whatever it is. And by the way, while we're on that, there's a law in Hawaii that a divorced couple in divorce process may not divest of real property. They are not allowed to sell real property without a court order. And so if you were to be asked to list a property and you find out that the sellers are getting a divorce, even if only one party is on title, they're not allowed to sell the property. So we have a divorce disclosure in our intranet that is just, here's the information, here's a link to the law. The law is only 3 pages long, it's pretty clear. And the reason that exists is because Hawaii was finding that people were selling real property and the kids were left without, enough money, and people would just run away with the money. So courts stopped it.
So now you can't do it until they close their divorce?
Yes, until
Without
the
a court
divorce
order.
is finalized. So that then begs the question, well, may I ask how far along are you in your divorce? And where are you at in this process? Because you're in fact not allowed to close without a court order. And that really means that you've settled, right? And that the divorce proceedings are complete. So now you're listing a property that technically can't be sold. So now you have to ask yourself, is this a wise thing to do? So the law doesn't say we can't list it. The law says they can't close until they're divorced. So ergo, we're listing a property that can't be sold. So why would we do that? Why would you put something on market for so long? Why would you want to do that?
Only if they're just a few weeks out or a few.
Yeah, well, sometimes they're not. Sometimes people want out so badly and they come and talk to us early on in the process because they're mad at their spouse and, they want out and they can't wait. And so all of that kind of goes on. So you have to kind of dig a little and then decide what's best. And